Okay, hello, Christiana. How
Hello,
are
Mariam.
you?
I'm great. I'm excited to be here with you today.
I'm so happy to have you. What an honor. So, if you don't already know who Christiana is, let me introduce you. So, she was raised in the Midwest, but she spent a lot of time in South Dakota as well, right? Is that correct?
Yep.
She progressively moved eastward with a deep love and interest in art and architecture. She did her undergrad at Penn State. She studied in Paris. She went to grad school at Columbia, which she earned a master's degree in historic preservation, which it would be so cool to have the same degree, but I think I'm done with school. So she worked in neighborhood-based preservation advocacy for many years, and then cultural site management, which is a historic cemetery for 2 years, then government and community relations. And she started supporting CIRCA as a side hustle, and it grew as her role expanded, and it has finally evolved into full time. And we're so excited to hear about your passion and experience. And her partner Nick bought their first she and her partner Nick bought their first home in 2022, which was a cheap old church. Which is that where we find
This
you
is
today?
us. This is
It's her
us.
cheap old church where she lives, and they're converting it into their home, and this is in upstate New York. Now, what stage are you at in your conversion process?
Well, we are pretty far along. So we purchased our property 3 years ago. We were
Okay.
that I mean it's not the most original story, but we were, like two young professionals, had progressively both moved eastward, landed in the city, had great jobs, but also a lot of student loan debt. And so we were living in the city and kind of playing that game of saving, but everything is just so exorbitantly,
Yeah.
just feels so out of reach. So what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And so the more serious we got that we were ready to really own something and take something on, it just became clearer and clearer it was going to be not necessarily in New York City for us. And so we just kind of loosened the geographic belt a little bit and kind of kept going. And then at a certain point, we were like, you know what? We're just going anywhere that the property just captures our imagination and just feels unpassable. And then we found this one. It's about 4 hours north of the city. So still familiar to us in kind of a broad sense. So when we purchased it, the church was not like, I mean, it was a shell in the sense of it hadn't been an active congregation or active use of any kind for at
Hmm.
least a decade. But like foundation is sound, the envelope is solid. It really
Hmm.
just needed to be kind of reimagined from this, gathering space for public to a private home. So we've done that. And now we're in the process of finalizing plumbing, which will make it fully
Oh,
livable.
well, so what year was the church built?
The congregation was established in 1783,
Oh
and then
my gosh.
I know, and then the
That's
physical
so much older than Houston.
and then the physical building came about in the 1790s.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is wild.
Yeah, with some changes certainly in along the way around. I mean, at least the most kind of major kind of design evolution that we know happened probably in about the 1860s. On the outside, some
Hmm.
more kind of flourish was added around some of the windows. Here inside, you can see once upon a time there was a really
Yes.
ornate
Oh,
kind of
wow.
fresco
Uh-huh.
ceiling. That probably wasn't original. I mean, the original congregation was very much of that, like kind of Puritan New England persuasion. And so it was very simple. It was a church and a meeting hall. So that kind of ostentatious design would never have
Hmm.
happened. But
None.
then fast forward to the 1860s, and it's likely that that is when that came. And then probably when the windows were added as well. There's evidence there's
Oh.
some ghosting in some places that the original windows were probably just squared, like just maybe a couple
Mm.
levels of stacked windows.
Hmm.
But we're really in the middle of the country, and there's not a whole lot of records. So unfortunately, it's a lot of oral history,
Hmm.
anecdotal, like, people who remember someone who was part of that congregation kind of a thing. And so we piece together what we can.
Wow. That is so cool. Now, how did you find this church? You said it's a cheap old church. Did you find it
Yeah.
on cheap old houses by any chance?
Almost. So CIRCA Old Houses is the sister project, sister company of Cheap Old Houses.
Oh,
So
okay.
we're
Okay.
always talking to each other every single day. And Elizabeth, who is the founder of CIRCA Old Houses, and her
Mm-hmm.
husband Ethan are the co-founders of Cheap Old Houses. She
Mm-hmm.
knew that my partner Nick and I were looking, and she knew that a church or a kind of a not even only a church, but a non-traditional structure was of interest to
Mm-hmm.
me, a firehouse, a schoolhouse, a general
Yes.
store, something like
Or a
that.
bank.
So anytime she would come across something, I told her, if you don't give me right of first refusal, we're not friends. So you better let me know. So she had found this one and she said, I'm going to post it if you don't, unless you tell me not to. And I was like, don't you dare. Let me go look at it. And then it never made it to Cheap Old Houses because I just fell in love with it right away.
Oh my gosh, what an amazing story. Well, I had to do some plumbing on my 1956 house. But I knew during my inspection period that I would have to be doing the under slab plumbing. But that I'm no
Mm,
stranger to that since I really specialize in these old houses, which is why we're on this interview.
yeah.
I I grew up with like a love of old houses as a little girl. And I never knew anyone that was in real estate when I was growing up. I just didn't know it was like a real career path. My degree's in biology. I actually spent some years in the classroom. I used to teach pre-AP biology, and I just knew that it wasn't sustainable. And so I just had like a really bad week at school. And I was like, you know what? I'm done. I finished out the year, but I got my real estate license. And then, it's only been about 3 years that I've really leaned into this like
Mhm.
love of old houses. I grew up in an old house. I currently own and live in an old house. My grandparents had an old house. I used to ask my mom if we could drive through old neighborhoods and just look at the old houses when I was like a
Yeah,
little girl. I
totally.
grew up watching This Old House and Victory Gardens, and like
Uh-huh.
that's probably why I love them so much and I love these old churches. So in Houston, old for us is like really old is 1885
Yeah.
or 1890, like in Houston.
Yeah.
Now, Galveston has houses as early as like 1850, but there are very few because not only was there the historic flood of 1900, there was also a horrific fire in 1885 that almost burned
Mm,
down the entire island. So there's not a lot of pre-1885 houses. And then, of
yeah.
course, throw the storm of 1900. So old houses in Houston that I'm really helping people buy and sell are really like early craftsmen. So like anything built about after 1910. There's some built between
Yeah.
1900 and 1910, but the Houston Ship Channel was dredged and completed by 1910, and then that's when we see really the explosion of growth and really nice houses. So the old houses I sell are anywhere from 1900 to about
Hmm.
1970. That's old in Houston. It's so crazy that your house is like has a 17 in front of it because
I
it means
know.
like people that fought in the Revolutionary War probably like built the house that you live in.
Probably, but I totally feel similar in terms of kind of my baseline of what I was used to before I landed on the East Coast. I mean, I grew up in South Dakota, like you said, and
Hmm.
on the western side of South Dakota, not too far from a lot of the gold rush towns, Deadwood, and places like that. And
Teddy
so
Roosevelt's stomping grounds.
exactly. And I mean, a lot of that architecture, I mean, it's the frontier. A lot of it, like I said, is
Hmm.
around like the gold rush. And so there's a lot there would be eventually money, but otherwise a lot of it was like pioneers and a lot of like smaller kind of just like, Victorian
Hmm.
vernacular architecture. So a lot of 1870s through the 1890s kind of a thing. I mean, I can't even tell you what the oldest house in the town I grew up in is, probably like the 1880s or 70s. I don't even know,
Probably.
but definitely nothing like this here.
Hmm.
I don't know if, and I did not grow up in a historic house ever. My father was in the military, so we grew up in base housing. And then when we moved off base, we still lived in just like kind of like your suburban track house. And I don't know if
Hmm.
if that yearning for that is what kind of pushed me to do it professionally. I don't know. It's like,
Ah,
it could be, 'cause, I mean, so many of my friends have a similar story as you, where like they grew up with it. It was always just ingrained in them. And it
yeah.
wasn't really like that for me. It's something that I did like actively seek out and was able to kind of fill that need
Hmm.
through like school and work and just adventures and things like that. So
Yeah, and
yeah.
probably like history as well.
Yeah, yeah,
history, like it feathers into historic houses and antiques because I'm like a
yeah.
lifelong antiques enthusiast.
Totally.
So, in Houston, we have this like terrible tear down culture,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why I've been so vocal about being so passionate about old houses because I want to put it out there in the universe that you can love the thing that's already there. You don't have
Yeah.
to tear it down. And then if you renovate time period appropriate, people love that stuff. They don't really want one size fits all. They don't really, we are officially done, book closed on millennial gray, and I've been trying to inspire people to love what's there or renovate period appropriate. We have a few Victorians in Houston. There's a lot of Victorians in Galveston, but mainly our older homes are like
Hmm.
craftsmen and then they
Hmm.
go up past
Yeah.
World War II.
Yeah.
So I just trying to inspire and like be involved. I'm involved in Preservation Houston. We have a good
Good.
brick. We have something called the Good Brick Award, and it goes to a project, either residential or commercial, that exemplifies really great preservation and restoration. And then we have a Good Brick Tour. So if you're a
Yeah.
previous winner, you're on the tour. So we have our tour
Yeah.
in November. We're so excited. So yeah, just trying to inspire and get
Totally.
people to love what's already there. So tell me
Well, and
about,
one thing to,
uh-huh.
well, just one thing to interrupt. I mean, it's funny that you say, because sadly, I don't think that like the East Coast, like New York City, where I worked for over a decade and now in more rural New York, I mean, sadly, I think that that approach of like tear it down, make it new is not
Oh,
unique to Texas, is not unique to like the middle versus the coast or anything like that. I think that it's really just kind of been a mentality that has been
yeah.
just been kind of foundational to so many people for so long that new is better. So why would I want old when I could have new? And
I
so it
know.
it just takes generations for people to understand that, the reason this old thing is still around is because of quality and materials and all the things. And it
Yes.
takes a lot of just like beating that drum over and over and telling people like this really is the way to go. Like we promise you, please come with us. And so I mean, it's so important for just as many people like you, wherever
Yeah.
they are, to just get involved, even if your local historical society, your
Mm-hmm.
local, if your town has a preservation commission, even if it's one person, just get involved because so often preservation finds itself in a reactionary position of someone is threatening to tear this
Mm-hmm.
down. We have to do something. And then you have days, weeks, if you're lucky,
Mm-hmm.
versus if you are on and so it's hard. I mean, it's easy for me to say this, but I recognize it's hard because a lot of people do these kinds of things in their personal time outside of whatever their maybe 9 to 5 job is. So you have to find time to,
Mm-hmm.
to create some kind of organization, loose or official, whatever it may be. And
Mm-hmm.
then, but it can be really worthwhile. I mean, so many times over the course of CIRCA Old Houses being a thing and people seeing that it is kind of a rallying point for people who love old houses, people will reach out to us and say, there's this threat to this house in my community. What can I do? And I mean, it's always hard because so often it's like, well, do you know what the timeline is? And they're like, yeah, the demolition permit's been approved. I'm like, oh gosh, well, there's
Oh,
not that there's
wow.
nothing you can do, but if we had been able to get ahead of it, who knows? And so just being as proactive as you can so that like over time, hopefully there's at least kind of a little group of you. If some tragedy were to strike, you're organized and you have some resources and you just have, a community of other people who love the thing
Mm-hmm.
you do and hopefully you can grow over time. But also
Yeah.
you mentioned that you went to school for biology. And I have to say, I
Mm-hmm.
love historic preservation as a field, as an interest, because it is one of the most kind of dynamic. It pulls people in from truly every field. I mean, preservationists are not just architectural historians, point blank. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
went to school with people who had backgrounds in chemistry and now they focus on conservation in biology and same thing. Maybe they're doing lab research to like look
Mm-hmm.
at like how are stones and things wearing. People who want to approach preservation and architectural history from a legal perspective and how do we regulate? How
Mm-hmm.
do we do those kinds of things? People who want to get into it from the foundation, nonprofit management. I mean, you can do so much and still be serving your
Mm-hmm.
passion for old architecture.
Yeah. Well, going back to what you were talking about, people tearing down beautiful old houses. So Preservation Houston just received word a couple weeks ago that a significant house is being torn down. The architect, last name is Lundy, the Lundy House. The architect died when he was 101 years old. It
Wow.
was his personal home in like the Bel Air area of Houston, and I believe a group tried to purchase the home and
Hmm.
they said no, and I think it's going to
Yeah.
be torn down. It's so sad. And then recently, I think I saw maybe on y'all's Instagram account the Queen of Hearts houses.
I heard about that one. Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, I saw several pictures where it looks like, just a wrecking ball. Like I guess they
Yeah.
didn't even salvage materials. Like that wood in the house,
Yeah.
like you
I'm not
you
sure.
can't even find that
Yeah.
stuff anymore.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I remember a couple of years ago, somebody had reached out to me about that house, and yeah, we gave them lots of, guidance about, how can you kind of organize yourself? Because the risks oftentimes is it becomes a committee of one, one passionate
Oh, right.
person who is like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. So, just trying
Yeah.
to just be helpful wherever we can so that people maybe
Hmm.
don't feel so alone when it happens. But at the same time, like, it's never easy because even say you do save the thing, well, now you got to do something with it, like, well, what
Yes.
now? And I have been involved in managing a nonprofit, like so many times, we'll post houses on CIRCA that are very historic, New England salt boxes, and they are stunning, beautiful.
Hmm.
And people will leave comments like, this is so stunning. It really should be a museum. And I always bristle when I see that because I'm like, okay, great. Do you have $1 million to start this endowment? Because this
Right.
house has to get purchased, it has to be maintained, it has to be staffed. This thing has to be a living thing that goes on and on. And it's a worthy goal, but it's tough because like
Yeah.
every single tiny little house being its own little standalone museum is a huge financial proposition that I don't know if everybody thinks about it in that way when they kind of make these hopeful, comments. But it's tough. I mean, it's the solution, of course, is not like, well, you're going to have to lose some. We'd love to not lose any of it, but we just kind of have to do the best we can and give each other as many resources as we can along the way so that whatever I'm doing here that's working for me in New York, if it informs what you're doing in Houston and vice versa, we can all learn from that and hopefully we get a little bit further along.
Yeah, and when I am looking to put an older home on the market, I'm putting on my marketing hat, of course, but I'm trying to cater to the person that loves the house. And
Yes.
when you stage it the right way, I did an incredible mid-century modern a couple years ago. It's one of my favorite houses I've ever sold. But I brought my stager in and I was like, all right, this is my vision for this house. This is our type of buyer. This is what kind of vibe I want. And we staged it super mid-century elegant mod. It was super cool and it brought multiple offers. It brought the perfect buyer that like loved the house and we saved it. But
Yeah.
whenever I would have calls, and thankfully, these are clients that I'd known for a very long time, and they didn't have to sell the house, and they gave me kind of like a carte blanche freedom to say what I needed to say. And when somebody would call and they would just ask for the survey, I would say, "Why are you asking for the survey?" And they're like, "Oh, well, we just want to look at the lot." I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, you want to tear it down. The owner is not
Right, right,
interested in
right.
that."
Yeah.
So,
Well, no, but I love to hear that because you're the kind, that's the mindset that I would love all brokers, of course, to have,
mhm.
I mean, I think the thing that unfortunately too many people get weary of, brokers and prospective buyers alike, when it comes to historic property, is they think, okay, but do I have to live like an 1870 Victorian? Like, I don't want to live like that. And it's like, well, you don't have to.
No, there's a,
We live in
yeah.
2025. I mean, an old house is a backdrop and you can respect its history and its architecture and layer yourself on top of that with whatever your very contemporary style and aesthetic might be. I mean, I think that's one of the things, no matter what the style of a house is, as long as I mean, my approach, I think a lot of our approach is that as long as whatever you're doing is reversible. I mean, that's such a buzzword with historic preservation is as long as
Mm-hmm.
what you might propose is reversible paint. You can change the paint, like
Mm-hmm.
light fixtures. Like if you want to take something down, if it's historic, if for some reason it's not your style, just
Yeah.
put it in the basement so that
Yeah.
when you leave, the next person can restore it exactly where it belongs. As long as you're, first do no harm, then just live in this house however you need to live in it, and it will adapt to you and vice versa.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a way to, and I think there's a lot of designers out there that are now, they're kind of breaking out of this like one size fits all or like very
Yeah.
trendy. there's a couple designers in particular that I follow that they really encourage people to be like weird and funky, and like the funkier the better. Like there's this
Yeah.
designer, I think her name is like Lil Waltzy or something, and she's like, your house is too boring. This is why. And she like totally rips like all of these new design trends. She's like, why can't you have
Yeah.
original like velour, not velour, that wallpaper
Velvet.
that yeah, it's a fuzzy wallpaper
Oh,
with
it's
like
like
a
flocked.
yeah, like it's like
Yeah.
a anyway, I think that there's kind of like a movement from normal houses to like old houses. And I
Yeah.
actually just did a YouTube video on, I think starting in about 2020, there's something really interesting that happens that has happened in like the Gen Z and millennial headspace. And people are gardening, they are keeping chickens, they are learning how to can and make jams and jellies. They're cooking at home, they're knitting, they're crocheting, they're playing mahjong, they are having bunko groups, and they're kind of going back to like this more traditional way of life. And why these behaviors are interesting is because I think it tells a tale of what they like in housing.
Hmm.
And I am seeing such a flip into like, oh no, we want the old house. We don't really want the new
Yeah.
house. We want the old house. Like we want to restore something, or we love this house because it is original.
Yeah.
And so I'm really excited to see more of that. And I feel like this specialty, this star that I'm following is I don't know that it would have been super possible before 2020. I feel like there's
Hmm.
so much more appreciation, at least kind of in my general space, or maybe in Houston, or maybe that's just kind of what I'm hearing
Hmm.
as I'm aging along with my clients.
Right, right.
Um,
Well, I think there's like two potential root causes that I agree with a lot of what you're saying. And I think that the two potential root causes, and I say potential only because there could be many more that I'm just not thinking of, but at least two, I think that yes, like, with the pandemic starting in 2020 and so many people being in their homes, people started to think about their relationship with their home and what they need from it in a very different way because it was no, it just, you're immersed in it so much more. I mean, before the pandemic, I had a different full-time job that, I was in the office commuting 45 minutes on the subway each way,
mhm.
and my home was kind of the place where at the end of the day I decompress and kind of like and then do it all over again the next day. But
Yeah.
now that you're in your space so much, I think that's part of it is that people are really thinking about how they relate to it because it's so much more relevant to their literal day-to-day life. But also it freed people up just like us, when
Yeah.
I started being full-time with CIRCA Old Houses and Cheap Old Houses, it's fully remote. So we could finally conceive of leaving the city and being someplace
Hmm.
more affordable for us. And I think so I think, yes, that kind of 2020 marker is one thing. And I think another, honestly, to your point about people wanting to be much more tactile is because, I mean, and this is never going to go the other direction, is just as things are increasingly AI and all these other things, everything is tech, 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 everything
Yes.
is virtual, everything
Yes.
is kind of not physical. It's left a gap that people are yearning to fill again. People, not that we all
Hmm.
want to go be like mountain men and women and like live off the land. Like I have no desire to do that.
Right.
Thank you very much. I would love my Wi-Fi,
Yes.
please. But yeah, there certainly is a sense of, I can only be on this gosh darn laptop so many hours of the day until I need to
Hmm.
just like put my hands in the dirt and just feel like I'm doing something that fulfills me in a way that this little screen is never going to do, you know?
Right, right. And I've actually been saying, because in the realtor space, they're like AI, AI, AI.
Yeah.
I actually think that there is going to be a yearning for more human.
Mm.
I hear your little co-pilot kitty cat.
She's
Um,
she's very vocal.
I'm lucky mine haven't come through the door yet. Just watch out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I think that there is going to be a flight back to human. Because when
Hmm.
I call a call center and it's a robot, I say talk to a human as many
Mm.
times as it takes to talk to a
Yeah.
person. I'm like, can I just
Yeah.
talk to a person? And
Yeah.
so I think that these are all behaviors that are going back to like living spaces and
Hmm.
even commercial spaces. Like people, they just want something that is built with people's hands and is not
Yeah.
always machine made.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and it's interesting too when it comes to architecture. Sorry to cut you off, but
oh
it's like
no,
it's not which isn't to say that if you love old architecture, you're like anti-technology because
right.
architecture is a mapping of
Is
technology, you
yes.
know? I mean, you only get to mid-century modern because we're so obsessed with the idea of form and production. Like we would
Yeah.
never have had this whole era if we were all just like, nope, we do it this one way from
Mm-hmm.
wood and with lots of detail and it never changes. So it's not that you're anti, progress or you're
Right. That's
anti
a great point.
advancement,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just like it all has its place and it'll keep evolving. It's just gonna keep happening.
Yeah, I mean, some of the mid-century houses that were like so streamlined, they were streamlined because after World War II, there was a shortage of materials. And so they were really looking for a way to house many, many people in a streamlined,
Yeah.
sustainable way. And so some of these like Jetson houses, like they're historic, but they're also like very technologically like cutting edge for the
Yeah.
time. You mean, look at the Jetsons, like it's a cartoon, it's a futuristic cartoon, but it's historic.
Yeah, totally.
So okay, so tell me about what Circa Homes is and how long has this what's the story and the genesis of all of this?
Sure, sure. So CIRCA Old Houses started, Elizabeth Finkelstein is the founder, and it started because she and her husband Ethan, who again are the co-founders of Cheap Old, but that kind of comes in the origin story. So they
Hmm.
started CIRCA because they literally were living in Brooklyn in their apartment, wanting to buy their first house, and everyone that they would talk to about a prospective property, the agents, nobody was really understanding that they wanted an old house that might have a creaky
Mm.
floor, that might have some wonky angles. They wanted that history and character. Everyone was just bulldozing, the
Yeah.
story for just like, great location. This is a price. What do you think? Like, yeah, you could gut it if you needed to. Like nobody was celebrating the house from a real estate perspective.
Mm.
And
Hmm.
so that's why they started CIRCA Old Houses in about 2015. So we're 10 years old.
Mm.
And it just kind of caught fire, slowly grew. Because I think there are other people just like Elizabeth, just like myself, who felt the same way that we're looking to eventually invest and buy our dream old house. And we want someone to help us cut through all the like old house, like great redevelopment potential, old house,
Yes.
like could
Yeah.
become 12 apartments, whatever it needs to be.
Oh.
So
Hmm.
it started from there and it grew. And then at a certain point, maybe like 4 or 5 years in, there was just this idea for, well, what about if we actually highlighted like the diamonds in the rough, kind of the houses that everybody else kind of looks at askew and says like, ugh, that's a tear down. But we all know like a
Hmm.
house has to be pretty far along to be truly unsavable. I mean, so
Right.
often, again, these materials were built with such quality that
They
they can be
were.
restored if you give them some time and love. And so that's where Cheap Old Houses came from. It started as just a monthly blog post, and that was so popular. It was a weekly blog post, and then it was its
Mm.
own Instagram, and then it's kind of ballooned and become its own thing. So both Circa and Cheap Old Houses started as just like trying to cater to people who, we just felt very passionate about how we didn't feel like we were spoken to in the real estate market, and we knew that,
Hmm.
our friends and colleagues felt very similar, and they just banked on it. And thank God they were right because there's just
Yeah.
hundreds of thousands of millions of people who
I
love these
know.
houses.
I love your content. I love seeing it all. And actually I love these tours that you started doing, I think recently, these where you walk the houses.
Oh yeah.
I adore them. They're so fun
Thanks.
to watch. You do such a good job. It's kind of like what I'll do more of those here in Houston, but I love to see other people doing them.
Yeah.
So okay, so we covered inspiration. So where does, I think we might have already touched on this, but where does your inspiration, like why do you
Yeah.
love it?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I think, like I said, partly because I didn't have it growing up. And so
Mm,
it
hmm.
felt very romantic and kind of that other thing. But then I
Hmm.
think also like having, banking some life experience and just, expanding on that, especially living in the city for so long. I was there for 18 years and, small spaces, limited
Yeah.
finances, all those things. It's very easy to go the route and not to like slam IKEA. I have some IKEA something somewhere, I'm
They
sure.
do have some good products. They do, they really do.
Yeah. But you'd find yourself, going to a friend's apartment and everyone looked kind of the same. Like everyone had the
Mm-hmm.
same Billy bookcase and everyone had the same
Mm-hmm.
rug and the same And so at a certain point, it was like, well, I don't want my thing to be exactly the same. I like the idea of it having a little story, a little character, even if it takes me a little bit longer to find the thing. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really where my interest in antiquing and thrifting came from, is that I loved like the thrill of the hunt, of course,
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes.
And then once you do that, like you have this thing now that you can say, "Oh gosh, do you like that? Oh, let me tell you this crazy story
Yes,
about how
yes,
I found it.
absolutely.
It's nuts. And I only paid $1 for it, whatever the thing is."
Or
So I
found it
think
in
it's
the
from there.
trash.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, like even the excitement that we have for each other's stories shows that like that those
Mm-hmm.
little experiences of like your own little antique hunting thing is like
Mm-hmm.
so quickly you find you're part of this community. I have so many friends that I've met because we like love to go antiquing together and like that's what we
Mm-hmm.
do, It's like that's the only thing that we do is we just plan antiquing trips. And I think that like those kinds of like finding those shared interests is something that CIRCA as a social platform has been
Mm-hmm.
able to give some life to and to let it be a thing that it helps you connect with people in so many new ways. It's been really powerful.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of antiques, what are the best markets in your area or maybe in like
Ooh,
New England? Because have you heard of Round Top, Texas?
of course. Yes, yes.
So I've been to every Round Top market since 2020,
Oh,
and
wow.
I'm a Round Top enthusiast. But of course I haven't. You've never seen it all, but like
Right,
I
of
kind of have
course.
seen it all,
Yeah.
and I think I really want to go up to maybe like Illinois. Or up
Oh,
to the New England states
yeah,
for
yeah.
the markets, or Atlanta has a big
Mm,
market as well. So
okay,
what
cool.
is your favorite market in your area?
Well, get your notepad and paper because
Oh,
I've I've
I
I've
mean,
got
I'm
I
here for it.
I literally have a Google map that I keep for my friends and people who send
I
me
do
nice
too.
flattery Google DMs of that. I'm like, oh, I'll send you my antiquing map. But I would say, I mean, here in kind of like New York, like the tri-state area into New England, in
Right,
Connecticut
I've
is probably
heard.
the one that most people have heard of. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I've been to it twice. It's just I have to imagine. I've not been to Round Top, but I have to
Mm-hmm.
imagine it's the same in the sense of it is so big and it is so
Yes.
overwhelming. And no matter how many hours we spent there, it's like you're like, okay, I think we did it. And then you turn a corner and you see like 75,000 more booths, and you're like, oh my gosh,
Yes.
you're kidding
Yes.
me, right? So I've done that and had some luck there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I found I've been in the much more recent time. I'm sure people will tell you like, oh, well, 10 years ago, it wasn't like this, but I've only been in the last 2 or 3 years. So
Mm-hmm.
when I went, it was a mix of like some things that they're very aware there are professional designers sourcing here and they price accordingly. And there are
Right.
other things that they're a little bit more palatable for like just the casual shopper like me.
Mm-hmm.
So Brimfield is, of course, excellent. Just this last spring, I went to North Carolina outside Raleigh. There is kind of like North Carolina's version of Brimfield, which was like a
Mm-hmm.
2 day kind of antiquing extravaganza thing similarly.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like most kind of pockets have like their kind of
Mm-hmm.
anchor thing that you kind of lead up to every year. A group of friends that I antique with, we all have our eyes set on. There's one in Ohio that happens like twice a
Oh,
year, and we're like, all right, well, we're road tripping to
what's that one
Ohio.
called?
It's called it's called like Heart of Ohio Antique Festival, something like
We're
that.
writing that down.
Yeah. Well, but then it's like it's interesting too because like for example, Brimfield happens like 4 times a year and
Mm-hmm.
it's one of those things where it's like, okay, so I've heard that the September one is really good, but then also the summer's good because it's hot and uncomfortable, so no one wants to go, so you don't have
Oh,
to fight. So it's like, okay, give me all your tips. Like because I could go to the May one, I could go to the September one, like what do I know? But yeah, I mean, we're kind of always like keeping tabs on like, okay, what's the next big festival that we should be,
mm-hmm.
building a complete weekend itinerary around.
Yeah, well, I definitely want to make it up to any of these ones that you've mentioned, but Round Top is pretty spectacular. I mean, it's a whole town.
That's
It's the
crazy.
whole, I mean, now the town is only, it's the courthouse, and then it's like
Yeah.
a square around it, and then it's like a blinking stoplight, and
Yeah.
that's the town. But
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
there's all this acreage on the outside. And so like the designer ones that
Mm.
may have heard about is like Marburger.
Okay. Yeah.
And I've been to like every Marburger since 2020. But there's like Blue Hills, which I love. Blue Hills recently doubled in size, and like the
Wow.
first show where it doubled, because like I have like I'm a creature of habit. I like have a breadcrumb trail. Like I have a mental checklist, and I like bring all my own food, all my snacks. Like I don't stop to eat because
Yeah.
like I am there on a mission.
Yeah.
And so like I have my like I know how long it takes me to do this stuff. And I remember I like rounded the corner at Blue Hills and I saw the double and I was like, oh my God, I'm so tired. And
Yeah,
I was like,
exactly.
wait, where am I? And like,
Yeah.
I mean, Blue Hills is like a couple hundred acres, so is Marburger. And then of course there's the fields at Warrenton, which is like
Mm.
a tent city
Mm.
basically. And I've actually never had the emotional bandwidth to go through the tents, but there's a lot of people that swear by Warrenton. So but I mean, people come in from all over the southern states, but also there's
Oh
a lot of
yeah.
people from California that fly or they drive their trailer. And there's actually
Yeah.
some really cool mid-century modern guys that come down from Chicago, I believe. And
Oh, I
they
bet.
drive down.
Is it oh, we had a really
Dial
great,
M for modern.
oh no, that's not the one I was thinking of. They're, what are they called? What are they called? Oh, I can see their logo and everything. We had a really great experience with a mid-century dealer in the during the production for the HGTV series that Cheap Old Houses did a year and a half ago. It'll come to me. It'll come to
Okay.
me.
Well, yeah,
Yeah,
there's two guys specifically that come down from Chicago and they
cool.
bring like a whole there's an old barn. There's several old buildings at Marburger that become shops and then they have six like gigantic tents that are set up. But there's two guys that do the barn together and they're both Chicago mid-century
Yeah.
guys. So it's just really cool. Like the people are really cool and then most of
Yeah.
these people coming to Round Top, a lot of them own old house. I mean, there's a lot of new houses in Houston, but it's overwhelmingly Houston. But there's a lot. I mean, there's just a lot. There's ladies that are taking shots at 8 a.m. before they cut the tape and blow the
Yeah.
whistle. Um, so okay, we kind of went over age. Like, so where do you think for your market or your area, what is like not old for y'all?
What is not old?
Yeah, like
Um, Yeah, I mean, I would say, I mean, officially, the official kind of, I mean, if you're going by historic preservation standards, the Secretary of the
oh,
Interior, you know, it's like usually things have to be 30 years or older to start to be considered. But it's crazy because when that definition was formulated, it was kind of at a time when like, okay, 30 years back, like at the turn of the last century, around 2000, it's like, okay, well, yeah, 1970, that and older, that feels fair. That feels 1970 and older feels old,
mm-hmm,
feels historic. But you keep moving forward and you're like, are we really saying that 1990s historic, guys? Because 1980 even, I mean, like it doesn't feel it, but at a certain point you have to accept that like, you know, we're only moving forward. The old everything
right.
that we're just getting more old stuff. So I would say where we are, like 1970s, like early 70s and backwards is kind of what I think most people think about as historic or old or vintage or whatever buzz, you know,
Mm-hmm.
antique, whatever word people are comfortable using. Because I think, you know, I've seen, I think people, which is funny because you think even further east of me into Massachusetts and Maine, for example, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they have like 1600s capes
Yes.
houses that they are probably looking at our 1890s and just that's cute, you know what I mean? So yeah,
People
it's
say
just
that
it
they say the same thing about Houston. They're like, oh,
yeah.
1965.
It's all context, right? It's all context. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I live like with traffic, 15 minutes without traffic, like 9 minutes away from the Astrodome, which was actually
Oh,
built after my house. And
yeah.
the Astrodome, if you can even believe this,
Yeah.
there are people trying to tear the Astrodome down. Like
It's
it is
crazy.
unfathomable to me. There's actually they've created the Astrodome Conservancy and the
Okay,
Dome Society.
cool.
And they actually have a kickoff event coming up. So
Yeah.
if you're watching the Dome Society and the Astrodome Conservancy, but like they're having to convince people to not tear the
Yeah.
Astrodome down. And like the Astrodome and the Alamo are world recognizable buildings in Texas. And
Cool.
the Astrodome really put Houston on the map, but it was
Yeah.
only built in, I think it was finished in 1963.
Okay.
So I mean, it's not terribly old, but like it's old for Houston.
Well, and it
Um,
goes to show that, you know, what makes something valuable and worthy
mhm.
of being saved changes over time too. It's not only a beautiful aesthetic. Sometimes it's because that thing is an important marker of, advancements in technology, of some intangible heritage is
Mm-hmm.
always really difficult to kind of, for some people to wrap their heads around. If it wasn't like the traditional Washington slept here, or it's just the stunning, most beautiful thing, some
Mm-hmm.
people have difficulty kind of understanding, well, why would we save that? And there are groups that have come in response to that. I mean, the nationwide, one of the biggest is the Vernacular Architecture Forum, that its
Mm-hmm.
mission is to celebrate vernacular architecture, like your
Mm-hmm.
everyday, buildings that are really important in terms of the fabric of our communities. And they're important to help you understand the arc of, your society, art, design, culture, all those things. But maybe at first blush, it's just a really simple, humble farmhouse or
Mm-hmm.
townhouse or whatever it is. And it's easy for people to think that those don't also merit the same kind of um, import, or at least the same kind of consideration that the big grand mansions do.
Right, right. Or Provenance, like this Einstein slept here. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
there's probably a house in California. Um, okay, so what are some of your favorite old home features?
Ooh. Well, it's funny because if you're looking at a post on Circa's Instagram or Facebook, I
Mm-hmm.
wrote it. And it's funny because so
Oh.
many of my friends will be like, "Oh my God, I could tell you wrote today's post. It's so you." And I'm like, "They're all me." So I don't know what that means. But if you ever, one of the features that I always make sure to get very nerdy about are belvederes, which are kind of the
Oh.
belvedere cupola.
Oh, a cupola.
People
Okay.
use the term a little interchangeably. But
Yeah.
they tend to be on an Italianate house. That idea
Uh-huh.
that, it's that place where you can kind of come up and like, have a surveying of all of your land and things like that. I love a Belvedere. They're so impractical for your modern life, but they did have a function, and they are just whimsical. And it's just this beautiful feature that, like, why
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't I want that on my house? So I think Belvederes are really high up there for me. Windows are something that any
Mm.
preservationist will probably like go to battle to the death
Mm-hmm.
over
Mm-hmm.
preserving and maintaining, restoring, not replacing an old window. My partner Nick and I we were just in Quebec for a weekend a couple weeks ago,
Mm-hmm.
and we were by this very famous, very well known, I think it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site,
Oh,
the
uh-huh.
Frontenac, Hotel Frontenac. And it's
Mm-hmm.
huge. And it must have at least 500 windows. I don't even know.
Mm.
And I'd say almost all of them have been replaced. And it's one of those things where you're like, you know what? I'm glad this building is standing, but oh my
Mm.
God, they ripped the soul of this building out by putting these just very basic 1/1 windows where
Mm.
that it used to be multi-light with so much texture and personality. And I know that people who could care less about architecture and windows are probably like, oh my God, it's a window, who cares? But it changes everything. It changes everything about how you read a house.
Yeah.
So windows all day long.
Yeah, I go to all of the Houston Historic Commission meetings, and
Hmm.
windows are a subject of conversation a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Well, it's tough because I mean the big window is strong and powerful, and that they
mhm.
are very good at convincing people, this window will last you 25 years. And most people
Big
think, well,
window.
yeah, and most people think like, well, I'm
Oh,
gonna be
yes.
dead in 25 years, so what do I care? Sure. And you're like,
Yeah.
no, 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 like because sometimes, to be honest, like sometimes
Hmm.
window restoration can be very expensive. It
It
can be,
is.
but you might
Yes.
do it once a century. If
Mm.
you do it
Hmm.
once, and then if you're just a responsible steward, just doing your seasonal maintenance, those windows are going to last forever, forever, forever. I mean, it's
Hmm.
crazy. And it's just getting people to think longer term, to think bigger picture, to potentially be willing to put up a bigger upfront investment because they're not going to have to be replacing, contributing to, the waste cycle, like all that stuff. So, yeah, I mean, so many arguments have happened around replacing versus restoring historic windows.
Yeah, I love original lighting, especially
Hmm.
like mid-century modern lighting. Any original quality wood floor,
Hmm.
enameled sinks or
Oh
enameled
yeah.
tubs, the
Yep,
big
yep.
heavy cast iron ones that are
Yeah.
coated. Anything. I love those. Have you seen those swans that are faucets?
I think so.
Like
Yeah. I mean,
the water comes out of the swan's
yeah.
mouth, and the wings are the poles.
Oh, really? That's great. I
I
mean,
love
you're
those
really
things.
fortunate in Houston and in Texas, even more broadly, you guys do have some really incredible
Mhm.
mid-century designs that oftentimes
Mhm.
the tile in those bathrooms and sometimes
Oh,
kitchens can just
yes.
be so phenomenal. And
I'm mhm.
I get it. It's not for everybody, but guess what? If it's not for you, maybe this house is not for you.
I know.
Leave it for the next person who's going to just be over the moon that this bathroom has been undisturbed, unadulterated since 1954 or whatever the year
Yeah.
is. Why not? Like that is so exciting to find.
Yeah, I'm very team pink tile, avocado tile. I sold a house a couple years ago. It had original tile, and it was a pink and a burgundy color scheme. It was
Mm-hmm.
beautiful. And there's a guy in LA doing historic um, real estate, and he posts the most incredible like
Yeah.
Art Deco. The art
Oh
the
yeah.
Art Deco stuff in California is like stunning. It's
Oh my
mind
gosh.
blowing.
So beautiful. Yeah, I know exactly who you're talking about. And they get some really over the top beautiful bathrooms with just tile work that will just, send you to the moon. It's crazy.
Yeah. Let's see here. Okay, so what have you seen in the Northeast as far as like preservation? Are certain houses, do y'all have like protected statuses? Do
Yep.
you have a historic commission?
Sure, sure. So the short answer is it varies by location. I was really fortunate to really cut my teeth and start to understand what preservation is in New York City,
Hmm.
which has the strongest local landmarks law in the country.
Oh.
So and I say that because the landmarks law in New York City is a there's both binding and non-binding, but for a
Hmm.
lot of places, a lot of smaller cities, even big cities that do still have some kind of review process, oftentimes the decisions that that body might make could just be advisory. I mean, it's you have to go through it, you have to go through a public review sometimes, but sometimes the end result is simply an advisory position. Whereas uh, landmarks in New York City, if you're a designated landmark, whether individual or in a historic district, there's a whole public process that is charged with, protecting those features. And it's not perfect. I worked for a
Hmm.
nonprofit based on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, and a huge part of my job was every single Tuesday being at the Landmarks Commission to give
Hmm.
testimony about this thing that was proposed in this community and why it's great or why it could be better, why it could be more
Hmm.
respectful, or all those things. So New York City's super fortunate in that respect. But obviously not all places have anything. I mean, some places have, much smaller commissions that are all volunteer oftentimes. Sometimes it's people who are interested but don't necessarily know a lot about architecture or preservation. So if you do have that knowledge base and you
Hmm.
have such a body in your town, my God, please be involved because you need a
Hmm.
balance of perspectives and opinions. But I have also sat through different places, I mean, in New York City as well, where it's like the people making these decisions do not necessarily have the expertise to be making these decisions. But
Right.
this committee needed a warm body, and that person raised their hand and
Hmm.
they show up at the meetings, and maybe they get more sensitive to it
Hmm.
over time, but it takes time. So yeah, so New York City is terrific. I interned for a summer between my junior and senior year, I believe it was, of undergrad at the Landmarks Commission in Boston. So Boston also has
Oh yeah, super
a
old
landmarks
stuff.
like an agency doing it.
Oh.
But I mean, I encourage people like look up your town. Like truly, it oftentimes landmark preservation, historic districts is couched kind of alongside planning. So it might be like the urban
Hmm.
planning department has like two
Hmm.
people who do this one thing, or maybe they have one person.
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean, it's look into whatever is local to you and see who is calling the shots. Is there an opportunity for you to learn from them or contribute if that's something of interest to you? Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, last question. So, are there any misconceptions that we should dispel for anyone who's watching?
Yeah, I mean, I think that like people tend to think people paint with broad brushes, right? Everyone's
Hmm.
guilty of that in some way oftentimes. But a lot of times I think people think that preservationists they don't like change. That's the biggest, myth is that
Hmm.
oh, like I said at the kickoff, okay, I have this 1790s house, so do I have to live like I'm in the seven,
Right.
do I have to, am I responsible to bring it back to the 1790s? Why would I do that?
Uh-huh.
But that's not the point. So I think that there's that misconception that preservation people, old house people want things to be old and never change. And that's not the case at all. I think we're excited that when we have these old things, they're part of your layered story. They help you see where you came from to know where you're going, that kind of,
Mm-hmm.
you know, sentiment. So I think there's that. Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing is that like preservation people want to be a part of the future of their community. They just want to make sure that we're bringing some pieces of the past along with us.
Yeah, I agree. And I've seen the Historic Commission be like very sympathetic, or not, maybe sympathetic's not the right word, but saying yes to some things and then being so staunch on other things
Mm.
or other areas that and I see these owners and their architects giving their case, and I'm like, well, I mean, it's clear they love their house. It's
Yeah,
clear they're spending money. Like, I
yeah.
know it's not perfect, but they love this house and like they're gonna be here for 50 years. So like,
Yeah.
why are you saying no? Like
Well, totally.
let them
Yeah.
live in the house that they own and are responsible for paying for,
Well, it's like
you
that,
know?
not letting the was the saying, like, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good.
Oh, right, right, right.
Where
Yeah.
it's like, okay, yes, like, so perfect example, when I was on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, one of the things that we had a lot of, it would be, you know, like your traditional New York City row house, you know, you're kind of
Uh-huh.
like
Like a
brownstone.
brownstone. Hmm.
Yeah. And, you know, those started as single family dwellings. And over time, a lot of them, not all, but many, many, many of them were broken up into multiple units just because we needed housing in the city.
Hmm.
And so a lot of what we would see is that brownstone would be bought by someone who wants to convert it back to a single family. And that is so great. How lovely. Why not? Right.
Hmm.
And so maybe they're like, okay, well, we want to restore the stoop. You know, we're coming to the Landmarks Commission because we want to put the stoop back because it was removed at some point when this became an apartment building. And so on the advocate side, you know, maybe our group would review it and say, like, that's so great. But like, if you like, you need to also do these 17 other things. And it's so funny because I did that job
Hmm.
right out of grad school and I was so principled and like, oh, this is how you do it. This is the right thing to do. And now, you know, some 10 years later, as a owner myself, I'm like, oh my God, why weren't we just thrilled that they were putting that stoop back? Like, just,
Hmm.
oh my, I'm so glad they put that stoop back, you know? But it's like, you have to kind of ride that line of it can't be all or nothing, and you can't be making too many concessions because very quickly, you know,
Right.
like if you give a mouse a cookie, then like the stoop never comes back, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's a tough balance, but it's balance, you know, and it's
Hmm.
doable. It's totally doable. And I think a big function that preservation can serve is it just slows people down, but not just for the sake of it. It slows people down, which gives you the opportunity to just really make well-considered decisions. For
Hmm.
example, when we moved into our home, this former church, there was this huge hole in the floor. I'm saying like the size of two cars, like a huge
What?
hole.
Why? What happened?
We were told it was because once it had stopped being a church, that one of the potential uses that someone was exploring was a puppet theater. And so they cut this hole in the floor for like the mechanics of puppet machinery.
Oh my
And then they decided
gosh.
no one's coming to a puppet theater in the middle of nowhere. So they just left and they left this hole in the floor. So when we showed up, you know, I thought to myself, well, I would have never cut that hole in the floor, but it's there. Like, so is it something I should work with? And so I had all these ideas if we would do this stair thing to get to the basement. And I had big ideas. And I didn't have money for any of it. So we did nothing. And now 3 years on, we have done different projects. And I look at it, I'm like, you know what? I'm so glad that I didn't just rush and do it because now in hindsight, that was not what was best for this building. Like
Mm.
that was not what was best for us or the building. And so preservation just can help you like just really think about it, like really like figure out what is the thing that's going to be the longest lasting, the most considered. And so
Hmm.
like don't think about it as just a hurdle, think about it as a contributing like aid.
Yeah. Well, what did you do with the hole in the floor?
We covered it up and it's where I'm sitting now. I'm sitting in the
Oh.
hole. It's where my kitchen is.
Oh.
It's where my kitchen is now.
Oh, wow. I mean, I'm trying to imagine a whole so you have a basement. So are you on a pier and beam, or is it a slab, or
Yeah, so it's literally our church is just one big square. There's this room I'm in and there's a basement
okay.
and that's it. And
Oh.
so it's basically like a big loft kind of space. And so the
Uh-huh.
basement is just up on pier, is raised, you know, up above
Mm.
the
Hmm.
basement space. So yeah.
Amazing. Well, maybe one day when your church is finished, you could give us a tour.
I would love to.
That would be so
We're getting
cool.
so close. We're getting so close.
Yeah. Well, did we cover it all? What do you think? Did we miss
I
anything?
I think so. I mean, I would say I hope that anyone watching this, if you're excited about old houses too, get in touch with both of us because we
Yeah.
should all be friends, but also
Yeah.
like there's probably other people around you are too. So find,
Hmm.
your local group, whether it's a nonprofit or an actual commission that does these things. And even if you just start kind of quietly kind of sitting in just to learn kind of what's around you and what people talk about, it can just be so exciting and it just deepens your connection to a place.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. Okay, well, I'll be looking forward to the tour of your home church in the future. And thank you again for doing this interview. I didn't know
Of
that you would ever
course.
even see my message. So I can't believe you said yes and
Yay.
thank you. And I'm going to be working on eventually reaching out to all of the agents that have become part of the CIRCA directory. If you're
Cool.
watching this and you don't know, there are agents that are part of the CIRCA Homes, so CIRCA Old Homes directory that
Houses. Yep.
houses that love old houses
Yep.
and have found CIRCA and that love preservation in their specific area.
Yeah.
So anyway, thank you so much.
My pleasure,
Amazing.
Miriam.
Have
Yeah,
a
I'll be
wonderful
excited.
day.
Thanks, you too. I
Yes.
mean, I don't know about you. It's October, but it's like 1,000 degrees here. So I don't.
Oh, yeah, it's not 1,000 degrees. It's about 90. It's probably
Oof.
90 degrees outside.
No
We're just
good.
lucky. I mean, we're lucky it's not like 97 degrees.
Yeah,
Hopefully it will be like, I mean, best case scenario, I think it would be like 75 for Halloween, but that's
oh, that's
probably not
crazy.
going to happen.
It's so crazy to digress into like old people speak. I feel like I'm getting into that year of my life of like when I was a kid, I was just talking to
Yes.
my parents and I was saying like I remember trick-or-treating in South Dakota, but still I remember trick-or-treating and like your costume didn't even matter because you were wearing a snowsuit because it was so cold for Halloween.
Oh.
And now I'm like it was 89 degrees yesterday. Like what are we
Oh,
doing?
in where you are or in South
Yeah.
Dakota?
I mean, well, both. I mean, my parents were like, "Oh yeah, one day it's 80, the next day it's 50. It can't decide." So I
Yeah,
think
and
it's all
some
over.
years they don't get enough snow in Deadwood,
Hmm.
or like at Christmas there's like not even
Yeah.
snow on the ground.
So sad.
We have never had to wear snowsuits for Halloween in Houston, never, not one time.
Yeah, yeah. I would tell you knock on wood, but I don't think there's a risk. I think you're fine.
No, it did snow earlier this year in February though. When was
Wow.
it? January, February, January.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
Galveston got like 8 inches of snow.
That's crazy.
Usually after the winter after a hurricane, we usually get snow.
Oh.
And we had Beryl
Oh.
that came through and took down a ton of trees. It had a lot of wind, took down a
Interesting.
lot of old trees, and then we had snow. And then similarly, when Hurricane Harvey came through and like flooded the entire city, we had snow that following winter too. So,
Gotcha. Gotcha.
so
Crazy.
yeah.
Mm. Well, guess what? Those old houses can take it. They've been here for
Yeah.
200 some years. They'll
It
stand a
has
couple
a,
more.
I tell people at old house or open houses because I hold only old houses open. I'm like, we look at it and I'm like, it's been here through every
Yeah.
storm since
Yep.
1920.
Yeah.
What more could you want? And they all go, oh
Oh
my gosh,
yeah.
you're so right. I'm like, yeah, and it's
Yeah.
the original wood floors, so you know it's never flooded.
There you go. Well, thank you so much for this chance to talk to people. I'm excited to see what other people, come out of the woodwork to be chatty with both of us.
Yeah, oh my gosh, that would be amazing.
Awesome.
Okay, I shall talk to you soon. Maybe we'll antique together.
Sounds perfect.
All
Thanks,
right.
Mariam.
Bye.
Bye.